Hi everyone, welcome to the course. My name is Nick Fiore. I'm your instructor for Global Development and Social Change. It's really nice to have you this semester. I'm just going to briefly go over the course expectations, brief description of what we're going to be learning and focusing on this semester. And through doing that, we're going to be taking a bit of a tour of the course website as well on Blackboard. So you'll be able to see everything that we're doing through this video. It'll be a combination of me chatting with you and also a screen share. So no need to leave this video. Okay, so like I said, my name is Nick Fiore. I've been teaching this course for 5 years at FSU. We developed it out of a face-to-face course that I taught back in 2010. And it's really nice because we're able to branch out, and you'll find actually that many of your classmates are not necessarily in Tallahassee. We've had students from across the country, even our FSU Panama campus that have, and international study centers that have taken this course. So that's a nice advantage to having this course online, as we get to mix it up a little bit in terms of where people are studying from as well. So a little bit about myself. This course grew out of a lot of firsthand experiences that I've had doing development field work, building organizations, mostly nonprofit organizations. And so it's, in some ways, it's a very practical course. But in order to get to that practical element, we've really got to dig in and do some, theoretical stuff. We've got to look at some historical stuff and really get clear on what this term global development, really just that term development in particular, means. And when we kind of peel back the layers, what we find is that it's a really contested term. There's no sort of one definition for development. That can be really frustrating for people, and in the sense that it's not your typical course where you've got one definition really for anything. Development is this term that many think grew out of this movement, particularly kickstarted in the post-World War II era. Some say Harry Truman coined it by calling Asian, Latin American, and African countries underdeveloped or undeveloped. And this kind of, kickstarted this first world, second world, third world rhetoric. And the notion that there are sort of hierarchies to what a society might aspire to be and to look like as an ideal model. This typically takes the form of debates about countries or nation states sort of as your context. But what I'd like to do is actually peel it back further from that and call into question the notion of really, again, what the term development is, what it means, what it might mean, and start looking at the term through various lenses. So, for example, if we take a country, a nation state, and we look at a typical economic development indicator, let's say wealth rates and average earning per capita. Well, that's one way of looking at economic development, but it doesn't really tell us much about how that wealth is distributed, for example. It might not tell us a lot about inequality, for example. So we might have a country with really high economic development if we're using as our measure, our core measure, the amount of earning per capita, even just the amount of wealth per capita, or an indicator like GDP, gross domestic product, right? But that doesn't necessarily tell us much about the distribution of that wealth, which is, in some senses, right, a deeper layer of understanding about how a society functions, and actually the power relations in a society. So we're gonna sort of ask critical questions like this. You'll find that a lot of this course is about digging deep and asking critical questions about the nature of how society is made up, about how we sort of measure ourselves, and sort of the values and ethics and morals that we attribute when we're actually in value judgments that we use when we're sort of evaluating ourselves, or we're evaluating other countries or societies or cultures or what have you. And what you'll find is that it matters a great deal what lens you look through. So again, if we're even looking within the same topic of economic development, you might use a slightly different lens, one of inequality and distribution versus one of just pure wealth and averages, and you come to maybe radically different conclusions. Some countries have really high levels of wealth when you put it in a gross sense and in an average sense, um, and those same countries oftentimes are very unequal. And in fact, the U.S. kind of falls on that spectrum too. Or certainly we have fairly high rates of inequality for the amount of wealth that we have. So we'll be talking about questions like this throughout the semester, but just know that development comes in two parts also. One is this development theory, sort of this notion of what is development, what are we really talking about here, what are the values that we're using to judge ourselves by as we think about, okay, well, how are we doing as a society? How are we doing globally in terms of how we're developing, how we're changing, right? How we're moving forward. But it's also, development is used as this term to talk about interventions or projects, right? And many of you who are thinking of going into the so-called development field, which is much of what I've spent my career in, is, direct responses to oftentimes crisis moments. In the case of international aid, right? That's anything from disaster relief to assistance around food and nutrition, for example. And these types of interventions, when we talk about development as an intervention, it takes on a slightly different meaning. So then we kind of get into sort of the development industry, and we start talking a little bit about, okay, problem solution type of stuff. So we're presented with a famine in X area. How do we respond to that in an appropriate way? And what you'll find is that these two discussions of sort of what do we value as societies, what do we value in terms of how we're moving forward as a country, as a planet. Certainly when we talk about issues like climate change, for example, when we move forward with those discussions in parallel with these intervention discussions, sort of solving problems and the development industry, when we move those conversations forward and we consider both things, we actually we improve both discussions. We improve our development interventions, and then we also, through thinking about the practice of engaging in development projects, these interventions, we're able to actually better inform and have a more diverse view of what development might actually mean, because it is it's a very subjective term. And so the more case studies you read, the more examples that you dig into, the better understanding you'll have of sort of what development means to you and what it also means in various contexts to folks around the world. So I know that still may sound a little vague to you, but it's one of those things where we've just got to kind of jump in and start the reading and start the lectures, start the documentaries, and get going with it, and it'll start to take shape. So that's the reason why we've broken this course out into 3 separate units. The first unit being a focus on really development history. So again, the history of this term. What does it mean? What are sort of the origins of it? And what, really, when did we start thinking in these comparative terms about, well, this country is doing this well, this country is doing that well? And really, it traces its roots back to the history of colonialism. So that's where we'll really start the semester, is thinking about colonialism, really thinking about the origins of globalization as well. And that's going to take us probably about 5 to 6 weeks to really get the hang of that debate and that discussion and that historical context, before we can then jump into a couple of models that we're going to use to look at, how we might analyze different development case studies. And to do that, we'll be looking at 3 areas really as our major model: the state, so countries, nation states; the market, which is the private sector, business, if you will; and then civil society, which is sort of everything else that falls in the cracks, but it's anything from social movements to NGOs and nonprofits and local sort of service organizations and citizen groups. So that's our second unit. We'll focus on those development sort of analysis models and those main actors: state, market, civil society. So at that point in the semester, you'll have a pretty solid understanding of the history of development, and that historical background. You'll have some solid analysis tools and some theoretical tools. And at that point, you'll begin to start getting into some really intense case studies. And we'll really spend the second half of the semester digging into different case studies on issues all the way from water rights in Bolivia to coffee farmers and fair trade and global supply chains in Ethiopia. And to do that, and really to do a lot of the work in this course, I want you to be able to visualize kind of what's going on in a lot of these debates, and certainly in the case studies, because oftentimes they're in other parts of the world. So I want you to be able to have that visual context. So that's why we'll watch a lot of documentary films. If it's not a full sort of feature-length film that I've posted up on the course site, it'll at the very least be, a short YouTube video or something like that you'll be expected to watch. So that's a nice way to mix it up too from the readings as well. So just that's a little bit of context about what we're aiming at, with this course. At the end of the day, I really want you guys to be able to just critically think and use those tools that you'll be introduced to start thinking subjectively, to start looking at development issues from various angles, again, through those various lenses. And in order to do that, we're going to need to draw on a bunch of different fields. So we're going to be drawing on economics, we're going to be drawing on sociology, a little bit of anthropology, certainly history, as I mentioned, and even a little bit of philosophy for the development theory stuff. So it's pretty diverse in terms of what I'll be expecting you to pull from, and it's nothing that's going to be way over your heads. Certainly as long as you're keeping up with the readings and the lectures and everything. So just know that it's very interdisciplinary as a field, and really what we're looking at, is how societies change, the values that we use to think about how we're driving that change, and then how we're sort of analyzing it or measuring it, and comparing it. So that's really the field of development studies. As for the course site, we're going to just jump to that real quick and do a quick tour of what is expected, and then also kind of where everything is. So if you'll see here, your home page for the course, which you can always get to by clicking this little home button right here, you'll notice it also by the course banner. And by the way, my email is right here. Feel free to email me anytime with any questions about course content or otherwise. And also feel free to always reach out to your TA if you have any immediate questions, especially about your discussion boards. So you'll see here, this is an announcements page. It'll be populated by the most recent announcement first. So you can see this first week announcements here right now. And the major expectations for the first week, I'm just going to go over those first. And then we'll kind of, through doing that, we'll get a tour of the rest of the course site. So the first thing you'll do is right here in readings and lectures. This is where you'll go every week to access your course materials. So you'll see there's 3 major units, as I mentioned. Before you jump into the first unit though, week 1, it's going to start next week. So you don't have to worry about any of those week 1 readings this week. This is sort of a kind of a dead week, really. We just want to make sure that everybody's in the course, everybody understands what's going on. Being an online class, we want to make sure that you're well aware of where everything is and that you're comfortable before we jump into the actual week 1 content of the course. So you'll live right here this week. So course introduction, just click there. You've already done that because you're watching this video, which is right here. And the major things you need to do, really the one major thing you need to do, is post up your attendance. The way you do that is you just toggle over here. This is the way you'll navigate always. In the various course sections from page to page, is you'll just toggle here with these arrows. So you'll just click on attendance, you'll click to launch, and then you'll just post your name up as a thread in the attendance sheet. So we'll click to launch, you'll just say create thread, and I'll go ahead and just create a mock thread for you guys, just so you see what we're doing here. So just put your name in the subject and in the message. You don't need to attach anything, just click submit, boom, you're done. That's it, that's simple. So that's your sample of how to just post your attendance. So once you do that, you're for sure in the course, and you've confirmed that you've watched this video. So that's the major thing that I need you to do. Now, you'll see we're kind of deep into this attendance form, so there's no way kind of out of it to get to the next thing in the menu. You can remedy that by just using this navigation board up here to kind of go back to the major folder or area that you clicked through to. So in this case, it's actually kind of popped us into a funny area. We'll just go back to readings and lectures, course introduction, and there we go. So we'll toggle over to one more thing that I'd like you guys to be aware of in the first couple weeks, really, which is a course planning assignment, which is where you'll just post some suggestions, and in the same way, you'll create a thread. You'll kind of answer some of these questions. What are your expectations for the class? As you get familiar with the course, and the website in particular over the first couple of weeks, I'd love to know just kind of anything that is on your mind, whether it's something that worries you or is confusing about the course layout, something that you like and you'd like to see more of, whether that's, again, in the design of the course and the layout or course topics and content. Maybe there's a particular case study or area of the world or certain issue that you want to learn more about. And certainly with the case studies, as I mentioned, those are going to be really diverse, and we have a long list of potential case studies that we can cover, some of which are set in stone, but I've left a couple weeks open for suggestions from you guys. So, if you type in here just, whatever suggestions, and then, just either in bullet point format like this. This is a text editor just like you'd find in Microsoft Word. You can add some suggestions, and then, again, you can just submit and post that, and it'll come up here as suggestions with your name on it. This is not a 4-credit assignment, but it's a way for you to engage with me, and it's a way for you to engage with the course and make it fit your needs a little bit better. And I do take these to heart, and I actually have made substantial changes to anything from grading policy all the way through to just small, organizational aspects of the course over the years, and course layout things as well. So just know that I do listen to these things, and I'm all ears. So that's the readings and lectures section. This is, again, where you'll live, week to week, and the way starting with week 1 next week, you'll go in here, on Monday, you'll have all your, your readings are here. You'll have the chapter 1 is the required reading. I've scanned it in, so you have a couple weeks to get your textbooks. You can order your textbooks online as online textbooks, so the publisher sells it sort of as an ebook. You can also order a hard copy. This is, a short video about kind of just detailing just a quick overview of what we're doing that particular week. You'll find some weeks I'll post a video, some weeks I won't, especially the weeks that have some documentary films or YouTube videos. The major structure, though, is just either a video or a documentary, a reading, and then a discussion question. The required reading, whatever is required, will be highlighted in red, and it'll be under a heading that says required reading. It's going to be pretty obvious, guys. So, and as you can see, it says week 1. You'll toggle throughout the units to the following weeks just through using that toggle arrow. Again, pretty self-explanatory. This tells you everything you need to know and do. For week 2, you're going to be watching a movie, reading this chapter, and then every week, so that's where the weekly resources are. Every week also you're going to be engaging with a discussion question, and that's going to happen in small discussion breakout groups. So you'll access those over here on the left hand side. You'll notice, right, I post the discussion question up under the readings and lectures as well, so you can be thinking about how you might want to answer that while you're doing the readings, and so you can kind of have that in your mind before you start the readings or before you start a film. So it's a little bit easier to engage with the discussion question when you get there. So, week to week, you're going to start early in the week doing your readings, doing the videos. Then you're going to go to your discussion group, and you'll click on, so let's say you're in discussion group 1, for example. You'll be there. Group discussion board is here. So you'll scroll down there, and then you'll have a prompt. You'll click into that particular week, and you'll make a post in there by Thursday evening every single week. That's not going to change. So your weekly responsibilities are to do the reading, make a post by Thursday evening, and then reply to one of your classmates by Sunday evening of that same week. So it's kind of a cycle, and you'll get used to it, and there's sort of a habit that you need to develop there. And in order to facilitate that, I've got the syllabus and calendar up here at the top of the page. You've got your syllabus, your grading rubrics for your major assignments and for the discussion boards. And then we've got a calendar here, which is a Google Calendar, so you can sync it up if you have a Gmail account. And I believe it works with the Outlook account that FSU gives you. And then you can also view major assignments here and the deadlines. So that's a good resource just to kind of get you organized. So those are your major weekly responsibilities, right? Doing the readings and videos for that week, and then posting in your discussion groups, posting a reply. Again, I'm being repetitive now, but I just want to make sure that that's really nailed in. Instructor info, that's a bit about me, and my email address and all of that. So, if you want to get in touch or find out more about my work, that's in here. And then as we go down, major assignments is the other key area of the course. These are the three major assignments that you're going to be engaged in this semester, and these happen only once in the semester. So early in the semester, before the end of Unit 1, you're going to be doing an article analysis essay. So you're going to be looking at either an article or a film of your choosing out of a suggested list, and writing a short analysis paper on that. Then you're going to be doing a short answer exam that you'll have a week to complete that. It's sort of like a take-home exam, and then you'll have a final assignment, which is a much bigger assignment that we'll get into a little bit later in the semester, using a tool called stakeholder analysis to analyze a case study. So those are your major assignments. You'll click in here, you'll find all your instructions and resources that you need to complete the assignments, and a Turnitin link for each of those assignments, so that you can make your submission. And that's really it, guys. There's other sections in here. There's a research resources section, which that's got some resources for doing further in-depth study on your major assignments, in particular your stakeholder analysis. Once you get to that, we've got just some other things if you're curious to know more about the field. Again, videos, lectures, movies, just some various multimedia stuff in there that's kind of cool to look at. And then, for those who are, in their junior, senior years, anything from internships and fellowships and study abroad to job opportunities, I'll post periodically through here. And there's already some links in there for some things you might want to think about as suggestions for what you might want to do if you're very interested in this field. So that's really the course site, and that's how everything will break down. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out and be very proactive about that. And I'll be happy to answer your questions. And we're just really excited for having you in the course, and having a solid semester. And again, we'll be in touch soon, and feel free to reach out. All right, take care, and looking forward to it.